Hi everyone, welcome. So today I am embarking on a new adventure. I am in California and I am getting ready to shoot what I hope to be some incredible content for you guys and take you on a journey as I venture into this new area of my life where I'm transitioning from being a corporate girl into a freedom chaser. Corporate life for me at this point in my life has been very rewarding up until this point. However, within the past year and a half, 2 years, there's been this incredible yearning to do something different. And although I may not have known what that different was, I've been taking this past year to figure out what that is. And that's led us to where we are now, whereby I am wanting to take folks on a journey with me to figuring out what their next looks like. What does transition look like? Currently, my role is Chief Operating and Accounting Officer with a family office business that I've been working for going on about 20 years now. It has been an incredible experience, and though I am working in a field that I love and I am working with a team that I've built from the ground up and that I'm absolutely in love with, there did come a time within the past year and a half where I've just felt a calling to do something different and not necessarily having clarity about what that difference was or is, but in this past year, taking a huge step and really taking a huge step at figuring out what that next step is. So what has been most interesting about this decision to transition away from my corporate career is all the different feelings and emotions that you are going through when making such a big decision to do something that you've never done before. In the beginning of this decision, there was a lot of fear, a lot of angst in really making myself comfortable in understanding that what the life that I know now is going to be way different and not knowing what that's going to be. So I would say towards the middle of the summertime, I really started sitting with those feelings. And one of the things that I did to kind of help me through that is really to get clear. And for me, clarity came in the form of getting a good handle on what my financial situation would look like outside of having the normal corporate job. And so what I did was I sat for a month or two in really just understanding the numbers of what it would look like if I made a decision like this, and work to get comfortable with some of the adjustments that I would probably have to make in my lifestyle as it relates to not necessarily having a day-to-day job. Once I got through the angst of that and feeling more comfortable around the numbers, I've really transitioned into this place of excitement at figuring out what that next is going to look like. And me being here with you today is all part of that process. At the top of this year, I had an incredible opportunity to take a trip to Bali. And it was incredible because the trip that I took, which lasted 2 months, I got there on January 7th of 2023. And actually I booked a one-way ticket. And what was incredible about that trip was that it was what I needed in order to what I describe as saving my life at the time. During that time, that led up to me taking that trip, I had been experiencing a lot of ailment in my body, and that ailment showed up in the form of bad digestion. It showed up in the form of incredible discomfort in my back, and really trying to get to the bottom of what was causing that. One of the things that I came to learn while I was in Bali was that I was really burnt out from work, from doing all the things. And although I was doing them and getting through them, my body was having a reaction and really trying to tell me I needed to sit and I needed to rest. And so I was fortunate enough, and with the support of the company that I work with, I was able to take some time off, and that led me on an incredible journey whereby I landed in Bali, and not knowing what to expect when I got there, all the things seemed to align in terms of the people that I was meeting that put me in a place whereby I could start this healing journey. So when I got to Bali, guys, this healing journey was, it was a little bit intense. However, it was exactly what I needed. One of the first things that I did when I got to Bali was that I was introduced to a healer. Her name was Dr. Bobby. Dr. Bobby was, 80-something-year-old white woman that grew up in Ohio and had been practicing Eastern medicine for the past 50 years and living in Bali for the past 35. My first meeting with her, I got there and she does her assessments on you. And, she checked my pulses and she looks at me and she says, "What do you do for work?" And I told her, "Hey, I'm in finance, this is what I do." She says, "You need a break." She says, "Your body is completely burnt out." She says, "I can hardly feel a pulse on you." And she says, "You need to stop overthinking so much. You think too much." She says, "Whatever you do is causing you to be in a place of not being able to be still." And so I said, you know what? It had been a tough year. The past year, my job had been pretty tough. I did take on some extra responsibility, and I guess, hadn't realized how it had impacted me. And so she says, "Well, we're gonna get you straight." And so this was one of the first persons that I met, and I had acupuncture treatment with her, which was a pretty intense treatment. I think Dr. Bobby's treatments lasted, an hour and a half to 2 hours. And she also uses a technique where she lights the pins that are on you in order to generate more heat in the needles in order to get to the parts of you that need the healing the most. So Dr. Bobby was one of my healers when I was there. I also got introduced to ozone therapy treatment while I was in Bali. And a lot of people don't know what ozone treatment is, but it was a treatment that was invented by the Germans during World War I, whereby they take ozone gas and they apply it in the areas that need the most help. One of the things that I found out was that my body was incredibly inflamed. There was a lot of inflammation going through my body. And so in addition to having acupuncture treatment and being put on a new dietary plan that could help my digestion come alive again, I also experimented with the ozone therapy. And I actually tried 2 forms of ozone therapy. One of them is blood ozone, where they take a pint of your blood and they go to the ozone machine, they pull the gas, they inject it into the blood. In the bag, they shake it up and then they enter it into your body. Another form of ozone that I tried was also rectum ozone. And because I was having such digestive issues whereby I was constantly constipated, I wasn't having a movement like I should, one of the things they do with the rectum ozone is that they actually give you an enema. And once you're complete with the enema, they take the ozone gas and they actually inject that directly into your rectum. So that was another form of treatment that I was introduced to while in Bali. And just for my mental and spiritual health as well, there was I committed to doing yoga every day while I was there in the form of Bikram yoga, which is hot yoga. And that was just a discipline that I found helped to keep me centered and disciplined as I was going on this healing journey in Bali. So when I left Bali, I will tell you, I was an emotional wreck. For one thing, I'd flown to Bali on a one-way ticket, not really having an idea of what I was getting myself into. once I got there and I realized that I was there to do the work of healing, after about the first 4 weeks, I had planned to go home, but as that time neared, I realized that I needed more work, I needed more healing. And so I decided to extend my ticket. And so I ended up being there for about 9 weeks total when I went this first time around. And when it came time to leave, it was very emotional because at that point I did find and felt that I had received all the healing that I wanted. However, I was afraid to go back home and fall back into the same pattern of being overworking, being burnt out, and not having the discipline around, the transition to more of a vegan diet that really helped with keeping my inflammation and digestion on track. And so I will tell you, when that day came, I cried the entire hour and a half ride to the airport, and I really just had to take a moment and have a talk with myself and say, you know what, Nichole, you've come this far. You are better, and you'll be fine when you get back home. So it was very emotional because I did feel that I got a lot of the healing that I needed. However, I was afraid to come back into the environment that had made me sick in the first place. There were an incredible amount of takeaways from having that time to myself in Bali. I actually was able to journal a bit while I was there, so that when those moments of clarity and learnings came, I took notes on those. Being in that space really allowed for the distractions to completely fade away, and I was able to sort of like hear my inner voice again, and realizing that with all the distractions that we have going on, being in the U.S., a lot of times we don't have a moment to hear our own thoughts. There's social media, there's television, there's this, it's that. A lot of people have a hard time figuring out how to disconnect. And that was probably the number one lesson that I got just reintroduced to in Bali, because people are so present in Bali. They really embrace every moment of the day, and they are present in everything that you're doing. So a lot of what I felt in Bali was the energy of the place, the energy of the environment, the energy of the people. And it really sort of kind of rubs off on you. And so that was also a very welcomed experience, where people are just happy to wake up in the morning and they may not have all the extravagant things that we have here in America, but they are just such a grateful people, such a happy people, such a thankful people. A lot of what they do is they make offerings to their gods maybe 2-3 times a day. So it was just very interesting to be in that environment where people are just happy, genuinely happy. They don't need much, and they extend such gratitude just to be. I'm gonna take you on a little ride down memory lane. I grew up on a very tiny island, the island of St. John, which is in the Virgin Islands. And it was a very sheltered upbringing. I grew up in a home with my mom. I have 4 other siblings. I'm actually the oldest of 5. And so I grew up on St. John. And it's such a tiny place. There's not even a stoplight. At least there wasn't a stoplight when I was growing up. I think there's a stoplight there now. And it was a very simple life. I remember growing up, we didn't have a whole lot of television when we were growing up. I remember we didn't get cable TV until I was about 14. And prior to even having access to television, just think old TV boxes with foil paper and antennas. Um, it was two channels. It was Peter Jennings on ABC and Mr. Rogers on PBS. Those were the two guys, gentlemen that I grew up with, and so we got cable when I was 14, and I remember the first real movie that I watched was Caddyshack 2, and within about a week or two of us actually having cable at our house, we got hit with a hurricane, which took our cable out. And so, you know, I would say that my childhood was quiet, and it really started me on my journey of dreaming about what else was out there. St. John was such a tiny place. I think there were about 3,500 people on the island when I was growing up. It's a very small community. But most people may not know is that the 75% of the island is national park. So we were in very small communities in different areas of the island. And it was beautiful, and I didn't learn to appreciate that beauty while I was a kid. I just knew that I wanted to explore the world. What else was out there outside of this little rock in the middle of the water? That's where my curiosity started for dreaming, starting for the possibility of travel. And when I think about my life today and the fact that, on average, at this point in my life, I think I'm on a plane like every other week. And so St. John, which is home, is somewhere that's near and dear to my heart, and it really informed sort of who I am today, whereby it really started that curiosity for figuring out what else is out there in the world. So island life is a life that I grew to appreciate as I got older. Even though it's a life that's simple, it's a life that is so enriching. I actually decided that I wanted to move back to the islands after I graduated college. However, it did take me some time to get back. One of the things I really appreciate about island living is the sense of community that you feel, which was something that I missed when I moved to the islands. I really missed the beauty of the place when I was growing up. I don't think I appreciated as much as I could have as a kid growing up. You don't know what you don't know. But, after I moved to the mainland, I realized that, where I live was not such a bad spot. Like, it was actually pretty beautiful there. And so I figured out pretty early on after I moved to the mainland that I was going to go back home. It's just that I had to finish all of my college education. And so growing up in the islands, one of the interesting things is that because it's such a small place, you really have to kind of rely on your neighbors. It's a very small place, especially St. John. When I grew up, we actually did not have a high school on island, and once you got past 8th grade, we actually had to take a school boat to go to St. Thomas to go to school every day, which is interesting. Most people take the school bus, but we actually took the school boat. And so every morning, all the kids that were in high school would get on a dock. We had a boat that was special for us, and we would take the 20-minute ferry ride over to St. Thomas to attend high school. If I had to think back to one of my biggest dreams as a kid growing up, the first one would probably have been to leave island. And again, it's funny how that happens because I ended up right back where I started by moving back home. But the other one was really to see the world. The curiosity for seeing and understanding what else the world had to offer was very apparent in me. And it's really what started my love of travel. And I had the ability to travel in my early 20s. My first trip out of the country was, I think I was probably about 24, 25. And it really just opened up, it started the floodgates for all the traveling that I've done since. To this point, I think I've been to over 30 countries and counting, and it's really just become one of my greatest passions. One of the biggest lessons or takeaways that I got from my mom while growing up is that really you can do whatever you put your mind to. I would say she was a pretty strict mom. However, I know that strictness came from her wanting us to be our absolute best. And I can look back on those times now and realize how that has impacted my life. I've never really been afraid to go after what it is that I thought I wanted. And so that would probably be one of the biggest takeaways. She really built that confidence in me as well as my other siblings to go out and do whatever our heart desires. This is something that I'm probably still working on, but I would have to say that probably one of my biggest heartbreaks is the fact that I never knew my father. And this is actually something that I am still working through, because I found that having that experience also informed a lot of how I've shown up in my adulthood in terms of relationships. And so this is something that I'm still working on, and I would have to say it's probably the biggest heartbreak because I've never had an opportunity to know him, and I never had the opportunity to meet with him or have any type of conversations with him. And so I think I found out about a year or two ago that he also passed away. And so what I also know now is that I will never have that opportunity. Knowing that now, I think created a new heartbreak. And so I would have to say that's probably my biggest heartbreak from childhood. I would say that my life is probably a good example of what success looks like, what they tell us success should look like. I've done all the things. I've checked all the boxes, gone to school, gotten a good job, worked my way up the corporate ladder, have had an incredible experiences. However, what I know now is that those experiences were also a result of the things that we bring with us from our childhood. A lot of my independence, or even hyper independence, comes from the fact that I saw my mom as a single mom really struggle to take care of 5 kids. And I remember telling myself as a kid, I don't want to deal with that, right? I found that my relationships may have suffered in that regard as well, because again, independent, not necessarily knowing how to give up control and let somebody else lead. So there are a lot of things in my childhood that impacted me positively to get me to where I am, but also impacts me negatively in certain areas of my life. With age comes wisdom, and so I'm able to recognize those patterns for what they are and adjust. And so, within the past, am I the same person today that I am 5 years ago? Absolutely not. These new awarenesses around how my childhood impacts how I show up, I absolutely incorporate them in how I'm moving forward in my relationships and just how I show up as a human being in the world. So as I continue to take you on this journey of transition with me, I think it'd be helpful to get a good understanding about some of the things that have impacted my life along the way that's really brought me to the point where I've realized that I really just want to be free to live the kind of life that I want to live on my terms. And so one of the things that influenced where I am now is the fact that I was diagnosed with cancer on October 31st, 2012, at the age of 35, with stage 2 breast cancer. Interestingly enough, when I got the diagnosis, one of the first things that I did was I went back to the office. I went right back to work. I hadn't even let the news of that diagnosis sink in. I think in that moment, I kind of disassociated what I had heard from what was the reality of the situation that I was in. Once I had the opportunity to sit with the diagnosis, I was fortunate enough to have a friend of a friend who'd just recently been diagnosed with cancer come to my home, and that's when I think I really started to deal with what I had just heard 2 days prior. One of the things that made the diagnosis so scary was my age. In that moment, and in those moments shortly after the diagnosis, I really started to see my life flash before my eyes. Many people hear breast cancer and they think older women, but here I was, 35 years old, at the peak of my career, and here comes this diagnosis. One of the things that I ended up doing, and I was fortunate to have the ability to do, was leave Ireland to receive my cancer treatment care in Chicago. And so for the next 2 years, I would be on a journey of not only battling and fighting cancer, but really healing the effects of having had the cancer and now coming out the other side of surviving the cancer. Although there is cancer treatment services available on island, if I wanted to receive some of the best care in the country, I did have to travel to do that. So every 3 weeks, I would get on a plane and I would go to my oncology hospital and I would receive my chemotherapy treatment. Each of those treatments actually took about 8.5 hours. And from the time those treatments were over, I had a very small window to get back on island. I had about a 2 to 3 day window to get back on island before the effects of the chemo would hit me, whereby I would be incredibly ill for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. At the end of those 2.5 weeks, I would then get on the plane and go do it all over again. One of the, fortunate things for me during my cancer treatment process was that whereby I thought I had 6 treatments of chemo, because the chemo did work so well, I ended up having only 4 treatments. And so once the lump started to disappear, I then proceeded to have a lumpectomy where they took out all of the cancer tissue and was able to test my lymph nodes in that area to see if there was any more existing cancer. And by February of 2013, I was considered cancer-free. And by February of 2013, I was considered cancer-free and proceeded to do one more round of treatments that included radiation treatment. For the radiation treatments, I actually had to move to the States for about 6 weeks because those treatments happen every single day for about 20 minutes. After completing radiation in the summer of 2013, I really was not prepared for what life would look like having battled cancer for the past year. And so coming off of being told that you are okay now, you can go out and live life as normal, I wasn't prepared for the fact that I really hadn't dealt with the fact that I actually had cancer. I sort of went into survival mode and doing all the things that needed to be done in order to fight the battle, but really hadn't processed what had just happened to me. And so coming off of being told I was okay, everything is back to normal, you can go on now, I found that I really went into a period where I was experiencing high anxiety, whereby even though the cancer was gone, every time there was an ailment or an ache in my body, I would go right back to that moment, right back to thinking that the cancer was back. During that period, one of the things that I ended up doing was seeking therapy to work through the emotions of now being a survivor. What does life look like after that? How do I come out of this place of angst and anxiety so that I can, in fact, figure out how to live a good cancer-free life? Going through that process for 2 years really also helped me to sit with getting a better handle on what it is, what would life look like if I did come through this, what is it that I wanted to do, how would I want to live life, and really all of that was gearing up to where I am now, which was, it really planted the seed in me whereby I knew that I wanted to have a period of my life where I was living freely, living on my own terms. That was a catalyst for me starting to get very clear about what steps I needed to put in place in order for me to transition to a place in my life where I would be free, I would be able to do all the things that my heart dreams of.